Your day can look productive while your best attention is quietly being sold for scraps. A message arrives, you answer it. A meeting appears, you join it. A tab opens, then another. By evening, you have been busy for hours, but the important thing that required your whole mind is still waiting like a bill no one wants to open. That is the problem deep work is written to confront. Cal Newport is not simply asking people to work harder. He is asking whether modern knowledge work has trained people away from the one ability that makes hard things possible: long, undistracted concentration on cognitively demanding work. The book builds around one sharp claim. Deep work is becoming more valuable at the same time that it is becoming more rare. The market rewards people who can learn difficult skills quickly, use intelligent machines well, and produce at an elite level. But the ordinary office, the ordinary phone, and the ordinary online habit keep pushing the mind into shallow work. Logistical, reactive, low-depth activity that often feels urgent but does not create much new value. The danger is not that email exists. The danger is that a whole life can slowly become email-shaped. Imagine two workers with the same talent and the same number of hours. One protects 3 serious blocks each day for difficult learning and creation. The other answers every ping instantly and calls the day productive because the inbox looks cleaner. What would you expect after 1 year? The actual result is not a small difference in style. It becomes a difference in skill, output, confidence, and identity. One person is training depth. The other is training interruption. Deep work moves in 2 parts. First, Newport explains why deep work is valuable, rare, and meaningful. Then he gives 4 rules. Work deeply, embrace boredom, quit social media, and drain the shallows. The book is practical, but its deepest pressure is personal. It asks what kind of life your attention is building while you are too busy to notice. Newport opens with Carl Jung building the Balian Tower near Lake Zurich. Jung was already successful, but he still needed a place where the deepest part of his intellectual life could happen without constant demand. The tower was not a productivity hack. It was an environment designed around serious thought. That image matters because the book is not pretending focus appears by wishing for it. Depth usually needs architecture, place, ritual, time, boundaries, and a willingness to be unavailable. The first major reason deep work is valuable is learning. In a changing economy, the ability to master hard things quickly becomes a central advantage. Newport connects this to deliberate practice. Attention focused tightly on a skill, feedback that reveals errors, and repetition that pushes the edge of ability. Casual exposure does not do the same thing. A person can read about programming, analytics, writing, design, or finance for years without improving much if the mind is always half elsewhere. Deep learning asks the brain to stay with difficulty long enough to build new circuits. Here is the uncomfortable test. Suppose you sit down to learn a hard tool, but every 10 minutes you check a phone because the moment feels slightly frustrating. What would you expect to happen to the learning curve? In fact, the interruption does not only steal the minute you spend looking, it also leaves attention residue. Part of the mind remains stuck on the other task, the other message, the other possibility. The next block of learning begins with less mental clarity than the first one had. That is why the book treats attention as capital. If your work depends on thought, your attention is not a mood or a preference. It is one of your main productive assets. Spend it casually, and the day may still look full. Spend it deliberately, and difficult skills become less mysterious because the conditions for learning finally exist. The second reason deep work is valuable is output. Newport uses a simple productivity formula. High-quality work produced equals time spent multiplied by intensity of focus. The formula is plain, but it explains why a distracted 10-hour day can produce less than a protected 3-hour block. Time alone does not guarantee value. The quality of attention inside the time changes the result. The book contrasts deep work with a culture of visible busyness. In many offices, a person who answers quickly, attends many meetings, and stays constantly reachable can look more committed than a person who disappears for 2 hours to solve a hard problem. The difficulty is measurement. It is easier to count messages, meetings, updates, and response speed than to measure thinking. When clear measures are missing, organizations often fall back on activity as a proxy for productivity. Newport calls this dangerous because it rewards the very habits that damage depth. Picture two colleagues on a team facing a complex problem. One colleague closes the door, reads the evidence, sketches options, tests assumptions, and returns with a clear solution. Another colleague stays visible all day, comments on every thread, and attends every call, but never reaches the difficult center of the problem. Which person would you expect the organization to reward? The actual result is that the visible worker may look more engaged in the short term, while the deep worker creates the value that matters in the long term. Deep work asks viewers to stop confusing accessibility with usefulness. Being constantly available can be generous in some roles, but it can also become a polite way of avoiding the work that only you can do. If every door is always open, the mind never gets to enter the room where its best work happens. The book then turns from value to rarity. Newport argues that deep work is rare not because people dislike excellence, but because modern systems make shallow behavior feel normal. Email, chat, meetings, dashboards, and social platforms all create a workplace where interruption is treated as evidence of connection. The person who resists may even seem difficult. A culture can quietly make distraction look responsible. One reason is the metric black hole. In many knowledge jobs, it is hard to measure the exact cost of fragmentation or the exact value of deep concentration. If a factory machine breaks, the cost is visible. If a programmer, analyst, teacher, manager, or writer loses the best 2 hours of thought to scatter messages, the loss is harder to see. Because the damage is invisible, shallow work expands until it fills the available space. Another reason is technopoly, the belief that if a tool is digital, fast, connected, or new, it must be good. Newport does not say tools are evil. His argument is more demanding. A tool should be judged by whether it supports the values and goals that matter. Without that judgment, people adopt technologies because they offer any benefit at all, even if the cost of depth is much larger than the gain. Imagine a company adopting a new collaboration tool. Everyone can now comment instantly on everything. What would you expect the culture to become? The actual result may be more coordination in small moments, but also more interruption, more performative responsiveness, and less space for concentrated judgment. Deep work becomes rare because the environment keeps asking the mind to prove it is present by never being fully present anywhere. Deep work is not only an economic argument. Newport also says depth is meaningful. This part gives the book its weight. Many people do not simply want to finish tasks. They want to feel that their best abilities are being used for something that matters. Shallow work can be necessary, but a life made mostly of shallow work often feels thin. The day is occupied, yet strangely unsatisfying. Newport draws on craftsmanship, psychology, and philosophy to explain why depth can create meaning. When attention is fixed on a demanding task, the mind has a chance to enter flow. The self-conscious chatter fades. The work becomes absorbing. This does not happen because every task is glamorous. It happens because the mind is built to take satisfaction from difficult engagement. A craftsperson shaping wood, a scholar solving an argument, a developer debugging a difficult system, or a student mastering a hard proof can all experience the dignity of focused effort. There's a spiritual undertone here, though Newport keeps the language practical. What we pay attention to shapes what our life feels like. If attention is chopped into fragments, experience becomes chopped as well. If attention is gathered, the day can feel more whole. The book does not promise that every job will become meaningful. It says that without depth, even meaningful work can be drained of meaning. This is one of the strongest cautions in the book. Deep work is not a luxury reserved for artists and professors. It is also not a magic cure for bad management, low wages, family pressure, or every form of stress. But wherever a person has some control over attention, depth can restore a sense that the mind is being used rather than merely consumed. The practical half begins with Rule 1, work deeply. Newport's first point is blunt. Deep work should not be left to mood. If a person waits until the calendar is empty, energy is high, and no one needs anything, deep work will almost never happen. The solution is to design routines that make depth more automatic and less dependent on heroic willpower. The book describes several philosophies of depth. The monastic approach cuts away almost everything except the deep mission. The bimodal approach creates long stretches for depth and separate stretches for ordinary demands. The rhythmic approach makes deep work a regular habit at the same time each day. The journalistic approach fits deep work into available gaps, but only works well for people already trained to switch into concentration quickly. Newport does not insist on one model for everyone. He wants the reader to choose a structure that matches real constraints. A deep work ritual answers concrete questions. Where will you work? For how long? What counts as progress? What rules protect the session? What support do you need? Water, notebook, offline mode, a clear target, a shutdown point. These details may sound small, but they reduce the number of decisions the brain must make before starting. The ritual protects attention before attention is under attack. Suppose you tell yourself, tomorrow I will focus sometime. What would you expect to happen when meetings, messages, and fatigue arrive? Usually, the actual result is that focus gets postponed. Now suppose you block 8 to 10 o'clock, put the phone outside the room, define the one hard outcome, and leave a visible note saying when you are available again. The work is still difficult, but the battle has changed. You're no longer negotiating with the entire day. Rule 1 also includes 2 ideas that keep depth from becoming a vague aspiration: the 4 disciplines of execution and the shutdown ritual. The disciplines are to focus on the wildly important, act on lead measures, keep a visible scoreboard, and create accountability. For deep work, the wildly important goal might be a manuscript, a course, a product feature, a research problem, or a serious learning target. The lead measure is usually hours spent in true depth, because that is the behavior that predicts the result. A scoreboard matters because deep work can otherwise disappear into good intentions. When you mark real, deep hours, the truth becomes visible. You can no longer hide behind the feeling of being busy. The scoreboard is not there to shame you. It is there to make attention concrete. It turns a private intention into a visible practice. Imagine a month with no scoreboard and only a vague hope to focus more. What would you expect when you look back? The actual result is usually a feeling of effort without evidence. A visible count of deep hours changes the conversation from intention to behavior. The shutdown ritual protects the other side of depth. Newport argues that the mind needs complete rest. If work mentally leaks into every evening, depth becomes harder the next day. A shutdown ritual reviews open loops, captures next actions, and gives the mind permission to stop. This is not laziness. It is recovery as part of performance. Imagine ending each day with tasks still swirling in your head, checking messages at dinner, and falling asleep with unfinished work half active. What would you expect your next morning focus to feel like? In fact, the mind often returns tired before the day begins. The shutdown ritual creates a clean edge. Deep work needs intensity, but intensity without recovery becomes another form of self-sabotage. Rule 2 is embrace boredom. This may be the most underestimated rule in the book. Newport argues that concentration is not only a decision made during work. It is also a capacity trained during the ordinary empty moments of life. If every pause is filled with a phone, every line with scrolling, every difficult second with stimulation, then the brain learns that boredom is an emergency. Later, when deep work becomes uncomfortable, the same trained impulse tries to escape. Newport's advice is not simply take breaks from distraction. He reverses the default, scheduled distraction, and outside those scheduled windows, practice not giving in. That difference matters. If the default state is constant stimulation, then occasional offline blocks are fighting uphill. If the default state is protected attention, then online time becomes a chosen tool rather than a reflex. The book also introduces productive meditation. While walking, commuting, or doing a simple physical task, hold one professional problem in mind and keep returning to it when attention wanders. This trains the mind to stay with difficulty without needing a screen. The goal is not mystical calm. It is mental strength under friction. Picture standing in a queue with no phone. At first, what would you expect the mind to do? The actual result is often restlessness, then scanning, then a craving for novelty. But if you stay with that discomfort, something changes. The mind learns that a small gap does not need to be escaped. That lesson later becomes useful when a hard paragraph, proof, spreadsheet, design, or decision starts to feel uncomfortable. Boredom becomes a training ground for depth. Rule 2 also warns against treating the internet as a harmless break during intense work. A quick glance can become a mental context switch, and the cost is paid when you return. Newport's attention residue idea matters here. The mind does not always leave the previous object cleanly. A fragment remains. That residue weakens the next attempt at concentration. Imagine writing one difficult page, then checking a comment thread for only a minute. What would you expect when you return to the page? The actual result is that part of the mind is still arguing with the thread. The work resumes, but not with the same clean force. To train against this, the book recommends deliberate concentration drills. Memorize a deck of cards, solve a hard problem while walking, set a timer for focused work, or practice returning attention again and again. The specific drill matters less than the pattern. You choose difficulty, stay with it, notice wandering, and return. That is the same movement deep work requires. There is also a caution. Embracing boredom is not about becoming joyless or rejecting entertainment. Rest, friendship, play, and leisure matter. The problem is compulsive escape. If the mind cannot tolerate a few minutes without novelty, then it will struggle to tolerate the longer discomfort required by serious creation. The book is asking for freedom from compulsion, not permanent seriousness. This rule changes how you see small habits. The 30-second phone check is not tiny if it trains the brain hundreds of times to flee emptiness. The silent walk is not wasted if it trains the brain to stay. Deep work is built before the deep session begins. It is built in the moments when no one is watching and the mind learns whether discomfort is a signal to escape or a signal to continue. Rule 3 is quit social media, but Newport's argument is more precise than the title sounds. He is not asking readers to reject every network or tool by default. He is attacking the any benefit mindset, the idea that a tool is worth using if it offers any possible advantage. Because almost every tool offers some benefit, this mindset lets shallow, Attention fragmenting tools accumulate without a serious cost-benefit test. Newport proposes the craftsman approach to tool selection. Identify the core values and activities that matter in your personal and professional life. Then use a tool only if its positive impact on those priorities substantially outweighs its negative impact. This is a higher bar than asking whether the tool is sometimes useful. A tool can be useful and still not be worth its cost. He also recommends a 30-day break from optional network tools. Do not announce a dramatic exit. Simply stop using them for a month. Afterward, ask 2 questions. Would the last 30 days have been noticeably more useful if you had used the service? Did people care that you were not using it? These questions move the decision from fear to evidence. Imagine deleting an optional app for 30 days. What would you expect to discover? Many people expect professional disaster or social disappearance. The actual result may be quieter. Some tools were useful. Some are mostly habit. Some offer entertainment, but not enough value to justify their constant claim on attention. The rule is not anti-technology. It is pro-deliberateness. Use tools like a craftsperson chooses instruments, not like a bored person collecting noise. Rule 3 also connects to leisure. Newport argues that if you do not give your free time a richer structure, low-value digital entertainment will rush in because it is easy. This is not a moral insult. It is a design fact. A tired person will usually choose the easiest available option unless a richer option is already visible. The book suggests planning high-quality leisure, reading, exercise, conversation, hobbies, craft, learning, service, or time with family and friends. The point is not to turn evenings into another productivity contest. It is to remember that the alternative to shallow entertainment is not emptiness. A richer life outside work makes the mind less dependent on the cheapest forms of stimulation. This matters because deep work cannot survive in a life where every non-work moment trains shallowness. If work demands concentration, but leisure trains compulsive switching, the 2 parts of life fight each other. Newport's view is more integrated. The person who protects attention at work should also protect the conditions of attention outside work. Imagine an evening with no plan except exhaustion and a phone within reach. What would you expect the mind to choose? The actual result is usually the easiest available stimulation, not the richest form of rest. Richer leisure has to be made visible before the tired moment arrives. There is a humane caution here. Social tools can support real relationships, communities, business, and learning. The book's test is not purity. It is value. If a tool strongly supports what matters and does not extract too much attention, keep it. If it mainly offers low-grade relief and vague fear of missing out, the cost is probably higher than it looks. A serious life does not need to be disconnected, but it does need to be chosen. Rule 4 is drain the shallows. Newport does not say eliminate shallow work completely. Some logistics, messages, meetings, and administration are necessary. The goal is to stop shallow work from expanding until it consumes the day. The challenge is that shallow work often arrives wearing the costume of responsibility. It feels easier to defend than a quiet block of thought. The first method is to schedule every minute of the day. This does not mean living like a machine. It means giving each block of time a purpose, then revising the plan when reality changes. The value is awareness. Once time is visible, shallow work can no longer hide as a vague fog. You can see how much of the day is going to depth, maintenance, communication, planning, and recovery. Newport also recommends asking your boss for a shallow work budget when possible. What percentage of time should go to shallow work? The question can be awkward, but it exposes assumptions. If a role claims to value high-level output while filling 90% of the week with shallow tasks, the contradiction becomes visible. Imagine a calendar where every open space is quietly filled by meetings and quick requests. What would you expect to happen to the project that needs thought? The actual result is that the important project becomes a leftover, even if everyone says it is the priority. Picture receiving a request that seems polite, quick, and harmless. What would you expect if you accept hundreds of such requests over a year? The actual result is a calendar built by other people's convenience. Draining the shallows means defending attention before the cost becomes invisible. It means saying no more clearly, making emails harder to bounce back and forth, and refusing to treat every small request as automatically worthy of your best hours. The final rule includes practical tactics that sound simple but change the day. Finish work by a fixed time. Become hard to reach in intelligent ways. Send process-centric emails that move a conversation toward resolution instead of creating more loops. Do not answer messages that are ambiguous, low value, or wiser left unanswered. These tactics can feel rude at first because shallow culture treats instant response as politeness. Newport asks whether that politeness is sometimes purchased with the best part of your life. This is where the book's caution matters most. Deep work is not permission to ignore every person, reject teamwork, or treat routine duties as beneath you. Some jobs require responsiveness. Some seasons of life leave little control. Some shallow work protects trust. The point is judgment. Shallow work should be contained according to its real value, not allowed to rule because it is easier to start. The book ends with a larger claim. A deep life is not only more productive, it is more fully lived. That does not mean louder, richer, or more impressive from outside. It means a life where the mind regularly meets something worthy of its full strength. The alternative is not obvious disaster. It is quieter, years of divided attention, professional busyness, and a sense that the important work never fully received you. So the practical question is not whether you can disappear to a stone tower beside a lake. Most people cannot. The question is what tower you can build inside your real constraints. One protected hour, one offline walk, one tool removed, one shallow habit drained, one serious task given the best part of the day. Your attention is your life in working form. Spend it like it can build something.